money, Jordan Belfort. Stacking penny stocks while I'm flipping these birds. Sipping on Ciroc, trip 'em up with the words. I done popped the Molly and I think it's be my third.
What is going on, DJ Nation? Kenny Kim here, bringing you another Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast. As you can tell by me doing the intro, Byron is not here. He is out riding bicycles in Iowa. He misses the 3M Open every year to do this trip. You must love it. You must really love it because he tells me stories about, staying in towns with crazy meth heads and where he can't leave the hotel because of the danger on the streets in Iowa. But he loves to do this thing so much he's gone for the week. Also, Mike, our producer, is in Portugal, I think, or Spain, or some vacation. The man's always on vacation. Good for him. He's out as well. So today, first off, before I introduce our special guest, I do want to say, make sure you go to DraftKings, who is the sponsor of the Fantasy Golf Degenerates show. Use promo code FGD. Get yourself a nice little bonus for first-time depositors on DraftKings. DraftKings, always the way to go. Make sure you go to DraftKings. Use promo code FGD. But our special guest this week is Spencer. Spencer, how do you pronounce your last name?
Aguiar.
Aguiar. I was going to blow it. So I'll let you go ahead. Spencer, of course, is doing the King of the Draft. He has his own shows for years. He's actually done a show with Byron in the past. So, Spencer, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and we'll get this thing going.
Yeah, Byron and I used to work together a handful of years ago, and Byron, before I ended up taking the same path in my career, he ended up leaving the company, and earlier this year, I decided to leave the company and start my own thing. So I opened my own website, teeoffsports.club, and a lot of what everybody loves from Byron on this show, I always tell Byron when we do content together, I know, Kenny, you did his show last week talking about the Open Championship, and Byron and I both have models. We both have data that we talk about. We both look at this from a super analytical, data-driven perspective. A lot of what Byron and I come up with, though, are vastly different from week to week. And when we used to do a show together, that was one of the big talking points that we would have during every single event. We would have our own segment, Model Combat, where we would talk about those large discrepancies on the board. And, I'm just happy to be able to fill in today, Kenny, what you are able to do on this show and what you have grown this podcast into. I commend you for everything that you have done. Byron is one of my really good friends in the space, and it's an honor to be able to fill his shoes, albeit very big shoes that are going to have to be filled this week.
I mean, the kid is 6'3", 250. So you got to think the shoe size is sort of large. That's just the way it's going to go with Byron. Let's talk a little bit about the King of the Draft. I know that you're doing this. If you could explain it, I was in it, and I got crushed at the John Deere Classic. It was actually hilarious because I think I rostered 17 golfers that week. I think 4 missed the cut, and 3 were in that lineup that I had in the John Deere Classic. I actually finished top 30 in the $100 single entry that week. So I actually had a really good week, and my cash lineup sort of hit. I actually won money that week, but came in last in the King of the Draft. Why don't you tell the people about the King of the Draft on your station? Let them know what's going on. I think the first round just finished this past week, correct?
Last event will be this week for the first round. Jeff Feinberg, Andy Lack. We have a good show on Tuesday. It airs at 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern. And if it makes you feel any better, Kenny, I also got eliminated in the first round. My lineup probably was not as good across the board. I played and competed in the Travelers Championship. Way too much exposure to Sepp Straka, who lost 20 strokes to the field. I had Patrick Cantlay, who imploded on Sunday. It was about 50-50 for me to be able to get through, but didn't end up doing it. I'm hoping that this show is something that we can do every single year, but the general concept behind it is my goal is I want camaraderie. I want people in the space to get recognition. And I talked about everything that you've accomplished, Kenny, and you are the high-end name in this space. If there is a list of 10 people in the space, I think you're one of the first 10 names that comes off the board, but not everybody necessarily has that same level of publicity. And it was really important for me to try to create a show. And this year, for this iteration, we got 36 of some of the bigger names in the content space together to do this King of the Draft tournament. And I'm hoping as this progresses, it can be more like March Madness is, to maybe we get 68 plus teams that are competing. The opening round contests look very simple and straightforward for what you would expect if you play DraftKings and DFS. It's 4 teams competing. The top 2 teams move on. And then we move into head-to-head contests after this week. So
it's snake draft, right? That's how. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. It's a snake draft format. We have a fun little way to be able to figure out the order. So there's luck behind it. And as everybody knows, even in a 50-50 spot of being able to move on, there's luck that comes into play. Kenny just discussed it with his team right there. It's like he can have a really good week, find the 3 wrong players, and you cannot dupe picks. And that's one of the big things for this contest is you get these really unique outputs because, well, everybody may have the 6 players that they want to fit within their $50,000 budget. As soon as one of those players is off the board, you're not able to get to that option because the other person owns that player. So it's almost like, I kind of describe it as poker where every single chip means more. And, if anybody who knows poker, like the ICM and what that means for every single chip that you have versus what the cash rates are, like that kind of plays in this contest. So you got to think on your feet. You got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to construct the lineup on the spot. And there's a lot of people that are vying for the same picks. So we're going to be down to the final 16 after this week. It's going to be a mad dash finish to the end, but we still have a lot of the big names in the space. It may not be Kenny, I'm not in it, but Byron is probably doing his bike ride right now to get himself focused. He was able to get himself into the Sweet 16. He's one of the top seeds in the contest. So if you haven't tuned into that show yet, I would love for you to check it out.
Sounds good, man. It was a fun little draft. I didn't do well, but I think it's a great little promotion, like you said, to get everyone involved, to get more eyeballs on people's content. And stuff like that. So kudos to you for bringing this up. Thank you for bringing me on. Hopefully, if you have me on next year, I do a little bit better. All right, so let's move on to the Open Championship. A little recap. What a week. What an event. It's so much fun to watch the Open Championship. I've become a morning person in my old age. When this pod first started almost 12 years ago, usually I would still be up from the night before watching the Open Championship until it ends. Not anymore. Get up around 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, put it on. It was great. You can't beat that. And of course, Ryan Fox. What an incredible back nine performance by Foxy. One of the better back nines we've seen to win a major. It could be recency bias, but especially for a guy that is not an elite, that is known as an elite player. What he did was just pure stones. And it's hilarious that he's like never even had a top 15 at a major ever before. This is his first top 15. He's almost 40 years old. I think he's 39 years old, and he got this one done. The back nine was so impressive. Going 3 birdies on his last 4 holes. And then, he had that bogey on 15, but if anything, like if there's such thing as a good bogey, that was a good bogey. When he hit it into the bunker, got a bad hop, went right up against the wall of the bunker, had to chip backwards, and was still able to get it up and down for bogey on that par 3. He actually had a little bit of a bad luck on the par 5 17th, where he hit, 3 iron, 4 iron off the tee to try and keep it in front of the bunkers that were at 325. But he was so jacked up, and the fairways were so concrete that he just went and it still went in the bunker. Was able to had some weird, crazy stance, was able to advance it, got the wedge up close, made birdie. Really, no, actually, he did not. He parred that hole. He parred that hole. But then on 18, with an amazing drive, an incredible second shot from 175, something like that, and then making that putt. Really, really impressive stones by Foxy. What are your takes on what you saw from Ryan Fox?
It was really clutch. It reminded me a little bit, Kenny, of I had Sam Burns at the RBC Canadian Open last year where he lost in a playoff to Ryan Fox. And I remember Ryan Fox coming down the stretch there, making the long putt, 20 plus feet, which theoretically is the thing that ended up forcing the playoff. But Sam Burns ended up missing a 3-foot putt that is really probably more of the reason after, like right on top of him, Fox making it. But it's funny, Kenny, listening to Ryan Fox talk about what transpired during that back closing stretch, because you talked about all the unlucky breaks that he had. On the par 3 there, when he gets it stuck to the lip of the bunker, has to play out sideways, makes a give or take 10-foot putt for bogey. The par 5, yes, he's absolutely amped it, rolls in 330 yards into the bunker, ends up making par on that hole. But like, he was the one name that I felt like was playing to win the golf tournament. And I remember
the only person that was on that leaderboard that looked like they wanted to win.
Yeah. And I mean, Scotty was too far back. I mean, obviously Scotty is trying to do everything. We even saw it on 18 with Scotty where he chips it 10 feet past the hole, trying to hole it because he knows he needs to do that. But it reminded me of Sam Burns at the RBC Canadian in the whole way that this ended up going down, where I remember Fox off the tee at that tournament out driving him. They kept playing the same hole. I think it was 18 over and over and over again. And Fox kept out driving Burns by like 30 yards. And Sam Burns is not a short golfer. And it's an unfortunate thing with Burns. I think he got into his head very late on that. All the data, all the statistics, everything in my model going into Sunday was pushing in the direction that Sam Burns was ready to finally win a major. And you play in a group with Ryan Fox, who is hitting shots within seconds of Sam Burns playing his shot, throwing darts all over the map. And even when things went wrong for him, as you talked about on the par 3, taking his medicine, playing it out sideways, hitting it onto the green, making the putt. And I know he's talked about the nerves that he felt during the back 9, couldn't feel his hands. You would never know this. This was, to me, somebody, and I like the way that you explained it. It is, I don't think it's recency bias. I truly think this is one of the better closing stretches that we have seen in quite some time, of somebody just taking a golf tournament and making sure that they won this. And I was talking to my girlfriend when they were on 18, when he had the putt to win it, and she turned to me and she said, "Do you think he's going to make it?" And I said, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Ryan Fox. I don't know if he's going to make the putt. And she turned to me and she was like, "He's going to make this. This is a man on a mission at this point right now." And that's kind of how it looked throughout the last 6 or 7 holes there, to where he wasn't going to lose that golf tournament. He put himself in every position to try to win it. And he took every aggressive route that he could to get himself across the finish line. And in a sport where sometimes, I'm somebody who bets Tommy Fleetwood all the time, that doesn't necessarily seem to close the show. It was really refreshing to see somebody like Ryan Fox put his foot to the pedal, go 100 miles per hour, literally playing at 100 miles per hour, and find a way to win this golf tournament. So kudos to him, respect for what he was able to pull off. And I thought it was a great Open championship.
Yeah, Cam Young sitting on the lead for a couple of hours was pretty crazy. I definitely thought it was going to a playoff until I saw those last couple of holes. You must have an amazing catch for your girlfriend to make that comment and watch the Open Championship with you. That's pretty money. That doesn't happen all the time there, brother, when it comes to girlfriends and wives. I'll definitely say that. Now, Cam Young was there, and of course, Burns. We got to talk Burns. I had Burns on the card, of course, and he was my chance. He got the full place at least when it comes to the each way. But man, that back 9, like, he was lucky to finish a -8. Like, he really, truly was lucky. Like, that back 9, I don't think he hit a fairway. Hit a green. Like, I'm sure he did. He hit a couple. But I can't remember any real birdie chances for Burns on that back 9. And nothing within 20 feet. The whole back 9 just didn't have it. And it's sort of becoming a thing now with Burns. Just not being able to get it done at these majors. He's had opportunities the last 2 years to get that win. And, a lot of the times it's the pressure, it's the nerves. He's sort of choked it away.
I've always said that it's really difficult to win a golf tournament. And sometimes it's just, not getting the unlucky break or getting a lucky break. We see it all the times where, players implode around the person in the lead and you're able to hold on as you're not actually making the putt. And sometimes you actually have to make the putt, and it happens, it doesn't happen. Like that's part of golf at the end of the day with this. But like the one thing I will say that is becoming troublesome and worrisome for him that you just spoke of is it does become a mental block at a certain point where you continue to put yourself in this position, not get across the finish line. We don't even talk about the Masters this year because like that was a tournament where it felt like it was Rory and Cameron Young going toe to toe for most of it. But for anybody who recalls that one, he entered it a group back with a real shot to capture that tournament. Ended up playing really badly to open up the proceedings there and got a little bit better as we went on to still put a respectable finish up there, but took himself right out of it early on Sunday. You think of the US Open last year where I had an outright ticket on him there and he wasn't able to get the job done. And I know we can talk about the unfortunate thing of his ball landing in that puddle and him having to play it from it and him not hitting the right shot, but these things start to compound on themselves, Kenny, and like, you never know. Windows and opportunities are very fleeting in the world of golf. I don't think anybody realized at a certain point when Jordan Spieth was dominating golf in the 2015 to 2017 range there, that we would now have a golfer that doesn't compete for majors and isn't on the leaderboard and is missing cuts and looks like he has the yips over putts of 3-footers at the Open Championship. And sometimes it's just a matter of capturing the titles when you have an opportunity to do it. We've seen Spieth do it. We've seen Koepka do it. Most of these players, Scotty Scheffler is an enigma when it comes to this. Most of these guys do not stay at the very top of their game through year after year after year. And these are starting to turn into missed opportunities now from Sam Burns, where in the back of his head, he has to be questioning what is going wrong, what is occurring for this to not go correct. And like the other player, and I think this was a real tweet, I saw it pop up. Like, I'm a huge Siwoo Kim fan, Kenny, and I understand he wasn't necessarily in that thing at a certain point in the back nine, even though he entered it in the lead. But like Burns, Fleetwood, Oberg, there are so many names out there that just continue to not be able to win these golf tournaments when they're close. And you kind of have to start questioning, what does that mean from a long-term perspective? We saw it for the longest time with Finau, where it derailed him when push came to shove. It happened with Xander there for a while. Xander got himself over the hump, ended up winning 2 majors in 1 year, but nothing is given, nothing is promised in golf. And it's unfortunate situations for Sam Burns, who is not a 20-year-old golfer. I don't know what his age is off the top of my head, but I assume he's about 30. The clock is ticking. You only have so many more majors that you can actually compete at the highest level, even if it's 40 or 50. And you don't want to start pissing away opportunities when you have a real shot.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Patty Harrington quote that I bring up all the time about this, where he says most elite golfers have a 2 to 3 year window where they do the majority of their damage. Rory's an outlier. Tiger's an outlier. Scheffler's still in that window. It looks like he's going to go past that window. So he'll probably be an outlier as well. But like, you got to get those. You're not going to have those chances all the time. And as they get older in age, like you said, Burns, I think is 30, 31 years old, or 29 to 31, somewhere around there. And there's not that many more chances where, in his prime, he's going to have that opportunity. He really needs to stick it out and get one of these if he's going to get one. Other golfers, Siwoo, you said, even he said he choked. I mean, look, Siwoo, he doesn't have that killer instinct, that winning edge. He just doesn't have it. Like, nobody with that edge would say what he said, right? He's a great player. I love him. I love watching him. He's hilarious. He's funny. He's entertaining. I just don't see a major in him. And then of course we get Scheffler, who couldn't hit a broadside of a barn with his putter. That's the only reason why he wasn't in contention, because everything else stat-wise, he was unbelievable. And then of course we get to Bryson. We got to talk a little bit about this rule. Okay, I'm getting some weird notices here. Okay, all right, but that rule on Friday, and it caused a lot of commotion. It was actually great, I thought, for the content purposes, right? So, of course, personally, with that ruling for Bryson, I honestly think that he probably did improve his lie. Okay, and there's a couple of arguments to go in this process, but the thing is, like, a lot of people, a lot of pros, a lot of former pros like Laura Davies, Peter Costas, Peter Jacobson, some other guys out there, Scott Hend, who's a current pro. They were talking about there was no way that you can get the exact right look from the videos that they took, right? Now, does it look like he's doing it? Yes. It definitely looked like he did it, especially that final step. And I know a lot of people were talking about the way he was walking. I don't think that's part of the situation. I don't think he was cheating. Basically, that's what people are saying about the way he was walking with the high steps and stuff like that. I'm a guy who hits it in the rough a lot. I hit it in high grass whenever I play a course that has need a waist high grass. I'm in there often. Okay, so I have walked in those shoes. When you walk in high grass, you take larger steps. You don't take normal walking steps when you're in high grass. You try and trample and you take larger steps. So I do not think he was cheating at all. Now, did he do it inadvertently? Probably. But the issue I have is, first off, in the video from the side angle, you can't see the ball. You have an idea of where it is. You think you know where it is, but you can't see the ball, right? And then the only way I think that you can get 100% confirmation, because that's what you need in this rule. You need 100% confirmation on this, especially if the golfer is denying it, right? And obviously, Bryson denied it, right? And if there's any sliver of doubt, it usually goes in the player's way, right? Unless they have conclusive video evidence. And I didn't see it. I think the only way that you can get conclusive video evidence is if you saw it from directly ahead and right when he swung and then rewound it. And I think that's the only way, and rewind it to see like where exactly he was trying to step and where his club plane was going at that time. Because to me, if you watch the replay of his stroke, he doesn't even really hit any of the high grass. Now, that last little bit of high grass that he stepped on in his final step was probably the one that everyone was looking at. And I can see that. But again, you don't have the front angle view of where his swing path is going to be, or reasonably be. I think there was a little bit of doubt. And so, and another thing is, if there was conclusive video evidence, why did they bring him back to the scene of the crime? Why bring him back there? Why waste all that time? If the video was enough, they should have just awarded a penalty, let Bryson yell at him, and move on. Right? In my opinion. And so, of course, what that did was it made all the players pissed off that they had to wait for their tee times. Right? And whatever. I feel like some of that's just being prissy babies because you would know within 10 minutes. Right? You would have an idea of where you're going to go. I mean, like, it's not like it was like a 30-minute or an hour difference that it could have been. It would have been like 10 minutes, right? And so, of course, let's talk. I'll let you talk about Bryson before we get into Rory's comments. What did you think about the ruling yourself?
I mean, first of all, Kenny, like, this is a golfer that nearly poked his eye out walking. He's clumsy. He does stupid things as he's walking. Like, at the end of the day, when I saw this situation, this is a gentleman's sport. You call penalties on yourself. When you bring him back out there, and I like how you worded that, and all of a sudden you make him reenact and you go through the motions again, it's either a penalty and you give it to him and you move on, Or if you're bringing him back out there and now you're assessing a penalty still even after the fact, you're questioning his character.
Yes.
You're bringing everything that he
That's
is
why
saying.
he was so
and
angry. I would have been pissed too. They're questioning his honor, basically, is what they're doing. I mean, like, he obviously said he didn't. Now, again, intent doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if he meant to do it or if he was doing it on purpose or not by the letter of the law when it comes to the rule. But to me, there wasn't enough video. If they had conclusive video evidence, they should have just made the penalty and ended it there.
If he's improving his lie and they want to call a penalty, that's fine. And I agree with that. Like, more of where I have a problem, and I don't know if this is a good example or not. It's a little bit different, but like everybody says in football, you could call a holding penalty on pretty much every single play if you wanted to. There is a line on the golf, and people skirt that line on both ends of the spectrum of it. There are, and I'm going to leave players nameless here because we don't need to start throwing around accusations of who is cheating and who is not and who's doing what. I don't know these players personally. I could never give the exact answer, but there are some players that are going to try to get away with a little bit more of what the rules allow them to. There are also spots where we do not call this consistently. Like, we cannot be in a situation to where I like Wyndham a lot, so I will throw this situation out. Like, Wyndham is somebody that I have won a ton of money on backing, somebody that I've supported quite heavily over the last couple of years where nobody else seems to. You look at it at the US Open, like, there are weird situations of him walking through areas and in real time, people writing in saying like he improved his lie, he changed this, he changed that. And whether he did or he didn't is not even necessarily the point of this. It's the inconsistency of the call. And I know Scotty was a big proponent afterwards of, we need more consistency across the board. We need to go back to where we were of, if you do something wrong, it's not, some of the times you get a penalty, some of the times you don't. We can't have, golf was never meant to be a sport where it was going to be under a microscope on television. And I know that we are not allowed to call in and the rules be changed based off of what viewers see on TV. But at the end of the day, there is something to be said about the outrage that ends up ensuing. And in the Bryson situation, we go on for hours after the fact of arguing back and forth, whether it's a penalty, it's not a penalty. We go back out there. Okay, now it is a penalty. What does that mean? And it's like, for this sport to continue growing, we can't have that. There needs to be consistency from call after call, that if you know that if you are, we will call it unaware in Bryson's situation here. If you are unaware with where you are stepping and what you are doing, then it's a penalty across the board for every single golfer if you've improved your lie. But I agree with you in this spot, Kenny, where like we can't see the ball. We don't really know where the lie was. We don't really know any of the exact situations to it. And all we know at this point is that the RNA has said, Bryson, you have cheated. You are going to lose 2 strokes, or you're at least being dishonest with us at the very bare minimum of it. And I did not love that. And I'm sure we're going to talk about next. It then goes into comments that are made from players and discussions that took place after that. And the whole thing kind of just felt funky to me.
Yeah, I just didn't like them going back out. If they just stayed in wherever the rules officials, wherever they were talking, whatever building they were in, and they just gave them the penalty, I would feel a lot better about it. Because what I just don't understand is why bring them back out there if you have confirmation from the video. It makes no sense to me why they brought them back out there. Now, another problem is you have to figure, like, this type of situation has probably happened, like you said, dozens of times during the week. But, no cameras on guys. And another thing, this specific rule has never been a part of the Open Championship for over 30 years. And that's just tracking back. It could be even longer. Like, this rule's never been called at the Open Championship in 30 plus years, in the last 30 plus years. It's never, ever, ever been called. Not once. Not once has this rule been called. And it has to have happened. Like, it has to have happened. And you're right. It needs to be more consistent. That is definitely an issue. And of course, we got comments by Mr. Rory McIlroy, basically saying that Bryson held everyone hostage. I know people are going to call Rory a little whiny bitch, whatever. I like him saying that shit. Look, if you agree or don't, give me more of that. Give me more honesty. Give me more, people not tiptoeing around subjects. Like, I want more of that. And that's what Bryson brings, right? Hate him, love him. That's what Bryson brings. I want Bryson back so bad to the PGA Tour because this is what he brings. He brings emotion. He brings feeling one way or the other. It's not just some, simple, milquetoast type of conversation that most of these golfers do when they're on the mic, right? Like, and that's sort of why I liked Rory saying those things. Now, necessarily that I agree with him? No, I did not agree with him at all. But if that's the way he feels, I like golfers being honest in that situation. And Rory's basically been doing that for the last year. He's basically in don't give a fuck mode. Is what he is. He's talking shit about the way the new tour is going to go. He said that the PGA Tour really doesn't matter that much to him anymore. He said that this past week. Like, look, I'd rather have that than somebody just doing some generic type of post-game interview. Give me what Rory did, even though I didn't agree with him, and that's what Bryson brings as well. He brings like hate to the game. People hate him, right? And there's not that many golfers that like golfers and fans hate like that. And I think that's what golf is missing. It needs like villains, right? It needs like bad guys to the amount of content, the amount of talk about this past weekend was insane. Like, everybody was talking about it. I think it's because of Bryson. And love him or hate him, I think he's good for the game. And I want him on the PGA Tour. Anything else catch your mind about the Open Championship before we move on?
No, I mean, I think we talked about most of it, Kenny. I do like what you said, though. Like, I'm just going to throw a random name near the bottom of my model just to, like, go to the guy who was 147th in it last week. Like, take David Howard. David Howard is not going to be on television a single time. Bryson DeChambeau is going to get every single shot shown in real time, or as close to real time as you can get in a lot of these situations. And the limelight that is put onto him compared to some of these other names, when you see every single shot, there's just, all I want at the end of the day is consistency. Just give me the rules, tell me what they are, and let's consistently enforce them across the board. And then there's no complaints about this person got a good break or this person got a bad break. If the rule is stated the way that it is, everybody knows what it is. And let's try to not let it be where players can walk on one side or the other. I mean, you look at Scotty Scheffler on hole number 17 and that whole debacle that ended up ensuing, and he's within his right to be able to do exactly how he played the situation and everything he did to the tee of what it should have been. But I mean, is that rule fair? Is that something that we should look into? It's like, that's the tough part about this at the end of the day, is trying to figure out where is the middle ground. You're not going to make everybody happy. I realize this every single week when I put out golf content. Some people love your picks. Some people hate them. Some people want to say one thing. Some people want to say another. You just have to do what's best by you or what's best by the situation. And I think if golf can just find where that uniform answer is across the board, where I feel like we have a little bit more of an idea in place from shot to shot, I think they'd be doing themselves a service there. Because, we could even go a step further with this, Kenny. If we look at DFS, we have a terrible injury report. Like, I don't know who's hurt or not hurt from week to week. This is not the NFL. For this sport to continue growing, you need to kind of not have this be the Wild West in situations, and you need a little bit more a uniform output.
Yeah, Rosie not touching a club for 2 weeks prior to the Open Championship would have been something good to know. Would have been nice to know beforehand, definitely. All right, so let's move on. I agree with what you're saying. It needs some type of consistency. Scotty's rule is crazy. Now, I don't think you can get mad at Scotty. He's just using the rules. Those are the rules given. use them, right? I mean, like that's what you do. It's not like he was taking advantage of something or trying to skirt the line. That is the rule. And so he just used the rule. That's it. That's all he did. So I can't hate on Scotty for that, but that is a ridiculous rule. Fucking ridiculous rule that they got. There's no doubt about that. But let's move on. Let's go to this week. This week, of course, we are playing the 3M Open from Blaine, Minnesota. Let's go over the course here a little bit. The PGA Tour heads to Minnesota for the 3M Open from TPC Twin Cities. The first 2 years the event was held here, it was pretty much a birdie fest. As the golfers that finished top 10 averaged around 23, 24 birdies for the week. And that was just top 10 average, not even like the leader average. That's top 10 average for the first couple of years. The next 4 years, a little bit more difficult because of windy, firmer conditions. Last year, it was back to a birdie fest with light winds and soft conditions. It's early in the week, but the wind forecast doesn't look horrible. Looks like, calm winds Thursday and Friday morning with the wind picking up a bit in the afternoon both days, but nothing crazy. On the weekend, it looks like the same thing. Weekends, the afternoon, we'll see a little bit more wind, but again, nothing wild. Now, it has been sort of dry there as well. So, it could play a little bit firm, but my guess is they're going to water some of this because, they're not trying to make this super difficult. And I think the worst scoring we've seen was -15. And I think that was a winner. And I think that year was super firm. And I think the winds were like a couple of days were well over 25 miles per hour. I think that was your Finau one. I think. Don't quote me on that. Now, when it comes to it, there's going to be plenty of birdies this week, but avoiding the big number will be key. Hollis Kavner, the 3M Open executive, said in an interview during the inaugural year, he said, "We don't want the hardest course on tour. We want birdies and train wrecks. Bogeys are no fun," right? Train wrecks are possible here with 27 water hazards on the course. But again, the leaders the first couple of years were able to avoid this as there weren't many scores worse than bogey by those that finished top 10. Again, because of the wind here the last few years, more train wrecks have occurred. With these current weather conditions, I think we'll see the winner around 20 under. Again, maybe a little bit better, but that's where I do think the winner will be. Now, I know some people are worried about Open Championship fatigue. And there is some valid worry here. If you look at the last few years, the top 10, a lot of the people in the top 10 didn't even play in the British Isles, in Scotland, or in the Open Championship, and finished in the top 10 here. But if you look in the beginning of this event, you had Finau won here, and he went like crazy low on Sunday at the Open Championship the Sunday before, right? And then you had Hodges win the next year. He went overseas, missed the cut, came back and won. So I don't know really how you can go about it. So what's your take on this, Spencer? Are you worried about any type of Open Championship fatigue?
No, and I think once that becomes like the general sentiment that you start hearing from people, I'm typically one that like doesn't believe in trends to begin with and is always trying to find the contrarian take in it. I think if you're trying to find a reason for golfers, it can be a deal breaker at the end of the day if you're really close between one name or another. But for me, I place absolutely zero weight in that. I think trends are meant to be broken. You talked about if you run the sample size very early on in this, you would say, oh, everybody who's played the Opens are the better players that are in form entering this. You look at the last couple of years, it goes, oh, well, the Open was too much, the time change. Everything that comes into play with that ends up mattering. Like, I just think you see ebbs and flows in statistical profiles in the way that the data ends up giving an output for it. And like you said, I mean, this is a course where it is highly susceptible for blowups. And there's a lot of weeks, and I'm kind of the king of this sometimes, where it's like, what course are my guys playing compared to the leaders at this point? And you're going to see the leaders and the winners of this get into the 20 under par range. And you're going to have names that are massively over par where you go, what just happened? It's because of all the water that's out there. It really does wreak havoc on the field. a lot of the around the green is non-existent for that reason. And that's a funny answer to give because it is very easy for those who do miss and need to scramble to salvage their score. But the problem is water is a grueling punishment. You can't scramble out of the bottom of the lake. You can salvage a score and make bogey potentially, but there's a reason why there's so many double bogeys that end up entering the mix. It's, as you mentioned, it's birdies and train wrecks. And this is what this course is meant to be. It's how it's meant to produce. And it doesn't mean that you can't limit your errors with some of that crisp, clean short game statistics, because a lot of the short game stuff is easy once you do find yourself around the green and if you're not in the water. But nearly 60% of your shots are going to come from 150 plus yards. A lot of the dispersion marks for me, even if you bring it up in my model, like I'm looking at one of the categories for me is
Spencer,
I weighed 7 of them.
Before we go into what you're looking for, let me finish the course preview and then we'll head into what you're looking for. All right. So let's get to the meat of the course here for this week. The Arnold Palmer designed TPC Twin Cities is a 7,450 yard-ish par 71, 4 par 3s and 3 par 5s. The length of the course, a bit deceiving, since the course is played about 1,000 feet above sea level. All shots will go a little bit further than normal, which will cut down the actual length of the course. Also, there are many tee boxes in different yardage locations, so the PGA has free reign on how long or how short they want the course to play each round. The par 5s are on the longer side, but golfers with above average length could reach into due to the altitude, giving the ball a little bit more juice. The par 3s will be some of the most difficult holes on the course. All but the par 3 fourth hole will play over 200 yards. The par 4s vary in length. There's 2 under 400 yards, 4 between 400 and 450, and 5 between 450 and 502 yards. Scoring is going to need to come on these par 4s for golfers to be in contention. Of the golfers in the top 10 the first 2 years, basically par 4 scoring has been a precursor for guys in the top 10 of the leaderboard throughout the existence of the tournament. It was sort of accentuated the first couple of years, but even since then, the guys who have been in the top of the leaderboard, top 10, have all done pretty well on the par 4s for the week. That's where a lot of their scoring came from. Now, off the tee, golfers are going to see tree-lined fairways that are above average in width, with fairway bunkers and landing zones and water in play on many tee shots. Strokes gained off the tee looks like it's a fairly important stat. And, as in 2019, like 8 of the 12 golfers in the top 10 gained at least 2.2 strokes off the tee. Bryson and Wolf finished top 2, but of course, they're the 2 of the longer hitters on tour. But then, like a year later, right, you look at it and you have like Long and Thompson, right, finishing 1 and 2. And they weren't anywhere near the top of the leaderboard when it comes to strokes gained off the tee. In the last 5 years, once again, we've seen strong off the tee numbers for the leaders. So I do think you would like some good off the tee play. I think distance is going to be helpful. But again, like we've seen with, Davis Thompson and Adam Long finish 1 and 2, it's not the end all be all for the week. But I think distance does help. Now, if they're not long, make sure their strokes gained off the tee numbers is still pretty good. That's one thing that I would look for. I think when it comes to the approach game, we're going to see a lot of approaches from 175 to 200, 200 plus. I think 60% of all approaches are over 150 this week. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at birdie making prowess, strokes gained off the tee, good drive percentage, some things that I'm looking at. The trees here, they're not bunched up like we see on most East Coast parkland courses, and there's a lot of room between the edge of the fairway and the tree line. Golfers who miss the fairway will most likely have to deal with, like around 3-inch rough, maybe a little bit more, because what I have noticed the last 2 years, the rough has been up a little bit. It used to be like 2. I think it's last 2 years, it's been around 3, 3.5. It's not like JDC where, it's going to be 4 plus, but, it's going to be a little bit below that. They also added some like waist high fescue in some areas the last 2 years. Again, trying to get more train wrecks is what they're going to do. And really, the only way you're going to hit it there is if you're crazy wild off the tee, which a lot of these bombers can sometimes do. So there's got to be a middle ground there. Now, on approaches, golfers are going to see greens that are above average in size. Around 75% of the greens were hit in regulation the last couple of years. I expect the number to be similar this year. We'll see how firm the greens are playing, or if they water them, because there hasn't been that much rain in Minnesota here in the last month or so. The greens are fairly flat, surrounded by rough, bunkers, and water, with most having a runoff area only in the front of the greens. The grass on the greens is pure bent grass. It's actually wall-to-wall bent grass throughout the entire course. And the stim meter rating should be around 12 to 12.5. It's not slow. They're going to be playing sort of quick. Now, let's Spencer, what are you looking for in golfers? Do you have anything to add about the course? Did you hear anything that I said that wasn't correct? What you got?
No, I think everything you said was spot on. A lot of the off the tee metrics. So I always try to weigh my model in a way that's going to be course specific on everything that I do. Like if you take the weighted strokes gain total, that's specifically for TPC Twin Cities or whatever course that we have for the week. Like weighted strokes gain over the last 24 is also going to be geared towards that metric for me. And one of the things that I notice, if you just take the top 10 finishers historically at this tournament, on an average week, off the tee ranges somewhere between 12 to 16%, I would say, 16 usually being on like the higher end of it, of the dispersion of impact that it takes for that particular category. I have nearly 21% off the tee this week, which kind of goes to what you talked about of this being an off the tee test where you can separate. Approaches 37%, a little bit higher than average. It's usually around 33% for that. Where the difference comes into play and where you're losing a lot of that ground is around the green that I talked about. It's 7% dispersion impact. Around the green is a spot where it is predictive here, but it is not to be expected, because if you are in the bottom of the lake, you cannot scramble. So it kind of goes back to the overall points that we keep talking about, where if you are making mistakes and you are not getting to 20 under par, you're playing a different tournament than everybody else. So even if you are preventing errors from being had, you're not working yourself up the leaderboard. Every single one of those mistakes ends up compounding on itself. Putting ends up being about 36% for me. This is just for top 10 finishers. It ranges a little bit differently for the winners that you talked about of names in the past. And we talk about guys that are not as long off the tee. There is a negative trajectory in my model for the impact that off the tee has for those who come top 5 and win. And I think a lot of those names that you mentioned would be the reason for that. This is just not as strong of off the tee players to begin with it. But yeah, like I weighed 7 categories this week. The very first one, weighted strokes gain total, which is just taking those exact percentages that I talked about in the critical strokes gain metrics and weighing it across the board. So your number 1 golfer there is going to be Scotty, number 2, Koiven, number 3, Mac Meisner. I took the same exact split that we just talked about there for the weighted over the last 24 rounds. Very naturally, Scotty's number 1, Koiven's 2, with a lot of the early success that he's had in his career. Tom Kim is going to be number 3 in that area. Strokes gained at TPC properties. I feel like every single show that I go on, Kenny, it's the same overall adage over and over again, where TPC properties are all similar, no matter how different you try to make them. They're made for television. You had the chaos of the water. You had the same wide open natures in a lot of these areas still, water being the damaging thing. But number 1, Scotty, number 2, Subaru, number 3, Kurt Kitayama, who is the defending champion here. You talk about the birdies and the train wrecks and the superintendent calling it that. Number 1 player in my model, Stefano Mazzoli, which that's basing it off of one tournament. I wouldn't look too much into that, but you once again start seeing a lot of these same names that have found success, these golfers that are making a lot of birdies and are not imploding on themselves. The Kurt Kitayamas of the world, a tournament favorite like Scotty Scheffler, a really good driver of the ball like Taylor Moore. I think the category for me that I place the most weight on would be this. I called it miss the water off the tee, miss the water on approach and putting. I'm sure there's a better way to classify it than that generic terms on it. But from a model output perspective, it's important for me to everybody kind of just see what's going on there. Essentially what I'm trying to find are golfers that are going to locate a fairway, not find themselves in the water, golfers that are going to hit that second shot and give themselves a birdie look, at least be on the green, And then we take a lot of the expected putting metrics that I do have in my sheet. Somebody like Doug Gim, for example, is going to make less putts, but he's going to give himself more opportunities. Kevin Yu being third in my model is another like very high-end name that you can think of in that regard of really good ball striker, doesn't necessarily make a lot of putts, but giving himself a lot of opportunities. And with Scotty Scheffler being in this field, and this is an outright answer above anything else, I know you're going to have to get to 23, 24, 25 under to beat Scotty Scheffler. If I'd be lying if I said I was sitting here and not worried about what Scotty can bring to the mix. I'm not necessarily looking anything into what has happened at the Open Championship, players who have played there. We've talked about all of that. So like, I want to find golfers who can really get hot or give themselves opportunities. So the Pearson Cooties of the world, the Max Homas, these names that just have a higher ceiling to be able to compete with a Scotty Scheffler. It goes to the answer of birdie and the bogey rate, and you combine those two things together. And then the last category for me is the weighted scoring. And weighted scoring, the easiest way for me to explain that is I like to take all the ranges that we talk about. So take the par threes, where the shots are coming from, how players usually scramble in those situations. What does it look like? And then look at each par four range, whether it's the 350 to 400s, 400s to 450s, or 450 pluses. I also found all par fours to be a really impactful metric for what ends up moving this leaderboard. So, if I weigh it in that capacity, Doug Gim, Jackson Koivin, it's a lot of the same names that we keep seeing over and over again. Kurt Kitayama, who's won this. So, all of these metrics, there's only 7 that end up getting weighed in my model, but as you scroll over this thing, like any of the off the tee data, I look at when there's a lot of water, when you look at big misses, you look at TPC courses, give myself a number there, and then go over to a lot of the approach metrics that I'm looking for. It's the same exact thing. How do players play when there's easy approaches, but there's a lot of water in play? And a lot of that ends up being what comes into this area for weighted strokes gain total based off of the dispersion marks that I talked about. But volatility, Kenny, would be the way I would describe this course. You're going to see the high end of the high end, and you're going to see the low end of the low end. And what you are truly trying to find is not locating the guys that implode on themselves. And that's what I tried to do with a category like birdies and train wrecks. It's what I tried to do with the category of avoiding water there. It's what I tried to do with the birdie versus bogey rates. But there are going to be players that are going to implode, and it happens every single year.
Can we see your top 10 in your model?
Yes. So this would be the top 10 for me. Scotty Scheffler's number 1. Kurt Kitayama, number 2. I think that's very standard. Where it gets a lot less standard for me, and this has been almost an every week thing, Mac Meisner has been catapulting up my sheet almost every single week. I feel like we're in a situation with him where the ball striking metrics are telling a really big story, and then you look at him on putting courses where birdie's easy to come by. Number 1 player in my sheet. That's how you help to get a top 3 ranking there. I think Max Homa, after a very, very slow last couple of years, has started to turn it around with a second at the John Deere, back-to-back top 40s after that. I think Homa's a really safe option this week. Tom Kim kind of gives you the same answer, and go down to the last couple: Koivin 8, Ben James 9, Hideki Matsuyama 10. Couple names beneath there. But yeah, a lot of it is data driven for where I'm trying to find the upside marks with it. And contest selection and what market we're looking at is where some of these upside versus safety start coming into play for me. On an outright bet, I'm going to always try to push it a little bit further up on the statistical end of it. And then for safety, that's like your cash games. That's your, if you're playing DFS, names when you're trying to get 6 of 6 through, their top 20 plays. I have Max Homa for a lot of exposure, but Homa kind of fits that narrative across the board of one of these really safe golfers who has the ability to kind of outproduce where we see him at $8,600. So that's how I built my model this week. That's generally the blueprint, changing the course every single week of what we're looking at, but it's always 7 categories. It's always weighed a little bit differently. If you go over to this area here, like statistical analysis is just looking at the stats. I always weigh course history. I always weigh current form. Those 2 numbers there will change based off of how much impact I want to derive from it. And then something like upside will give you 100%. Safety is going to give you that massive disparity where it's just going to kind of look to what kind of form are you in? How do you play on a course? overall takes the entire landscape of that, merges it into one category, and ranks it 1 to 144 this week.
Well, I like your top 10 because I got a lot of guys on it. So that makes me happy. I'm happy about that. Before we move on to our betting segment, let's go ahead and hear a word from our sponsor.
New DraftKings customers, get in the game right now. Sign up today, make your first deposit of just $5 and instantly get $25 in free Pick 6 bonus picks, plus a powerful single-use 100% winnings boost token. That means you can play for free with $25 in bonus picks, and if you win, boost those winnings up to 100%. That's up to $100 boost in cash. New customers only. Bonus picks and your boost token expire in just 14 days, so don't wait. This offer is live from June 20th through August 23rd. Download the DraftKings app, sign up, and start playing Pick 6 today. Must be 18 or older, 19 in Alabama, Nebraska, 21 in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia. Valid only where Pick 6 is available. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. New customers only, minimum $5 deposit required. Full terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Play free, win bigger, only on DraftKings Pick 6.
All right, so we're back. Let's go over our favorite bets for this week. Of course, like usual, I will go first. Some of my bets for this week. First one, it's going to be Doug Ghim. 40-1 with 8 places each way. He comes in 5th in my model this week. First in strokes gained off the tee in the field in the last 24 rounds. Iron game has been improving. Really plays par 4s very, very well. 11th in double bogey avoidance and 5th in bogey avoidance in this field in the last 24 rounds. Played this event 6 times, making the cut 4 times. But every single time he's made the cut, he's finished inside the top 30. So when he does play the weekend, he plays this course, pretty well. And he's been coming in pretty hot here recently, probably in the best form we've seen of Doug Ghim in the last couple of years. So I'm going to go with my guy Seaweed Doug at 40-1. Next, it's going to be Pearson Coody, 40-1 with 8 places. He finished 3rd here last year. We've seen glimpses of stellar play from him. But he just hasn't been able to put like 4 consecutive rounds together. He always has some type of weird blow-up round that makes him finish, 29th, 28th, when, the other 3 rounds, he's probably top 10, top 15 in scoring. We've seen that like a couple of times from him in the last like 2 or 3 months. Now, I'm hoping that, this can be a place where he can finally put those 4 rounds together, as he did have like one of his best finishes ever. I think he finished 2nd at the Farmers. This was probably his 2nd best finish ever. 3rd place here last year. So he's also fared well in weak field events with easy scoring conditions throughout his short career. So I do like Coody at 40-1. Next, Jackson Subaru, 45-1 with 8 places. He comes in number 2 in my model for the week. Ball striking has been very good. Great from 175 plus. Been playing the best golf of his short pro career the last couple of months. So I'm just going to see if I can ride the heater with him, because it feels like, the way he's playing, I'll be honest, like when I see a young golfer like this playing exceptionally well, I never think it can last. But it has lasted longer than I thought. I mean, he was, on the top of the leaderboard the first 2 days of the Open Championship. He fell a little bit on the weekend, but he was still up there. And so he's still continuing this nice little swing. And so I'm going to jump back on him after being off of him for the last 2 or 3 times he's played, because I just didn't think he could continue doing what he's doing. Now he's seen it for such an extended amount of time that I have to jump back on for Mr. Subaru. Next, it's going to be Taylor Pendrith, 66-1 with 8 places. We saw some life from Pendy a couple of weeks ago at the ISCO, where he finished 2nd. His iron game has looked better the last couple of weeks, and he's had a 5th place finish here in the past. He also gains 1.25 strokes on the field in very weak field events. For some reason, whenever he gets to these events where it's just a bunch of scrubs, he tends to go off. So I'll take a 66-1 number for Pendy. Next, it's going to be William Mao, 75-1 with 8 places. Is that a first name? I don't even know if William is his first name. It just felt like that was correct. Anyways, Mao has been a solid ball striker the past few months. He's gained strokes ball striking in his last 6 events, coming off a 10th at the ISCO, finished 7th here last year. Ben Coles, 80-1, 8 places. Coles has had some heartbreak a couple weeks ago, but he has been on a very good run, both on the Corn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour. Comes in 9th in my model this week, 8th in tee to green, 7th in approach, 4th in good drive percentage, 3rd in par 4 scoring, 15th in double bogey avoidance, 18th in bogey avoidance, and this is all in this field in the last 24 rounds. Next, Jesper Svensson, 100-1 with 8 places. He's a monster off the tee. He finished 14th here last year and is coming off back-to-back top 10s at non-links courses. I'm not really worried about his struggles the last 2 weeks on links and faux links courses. Some people just not for them. But the 2 events prior on regular PGA Tour courses, he had top 10s coming in. So he's back on a regular PGA Tour course. Hopefully he can get back to his momentum that he had prior to going over to the United Kingdom. And then I got 2 long shots. It's going to be Aaron Wise, 200-1, 8 places. I'm jumping on the bandwagon here. We've seen glimpses from him. Everybody's on him. I'm going to go ahead and jump on him too at 200-1 with 8 places. And I also have David Lipsky, 200-1 with 8 places. I think he's 3rd in average strokes gained, average total strokes gained at this event in its history. I think he's 3rd or 4th overall, and I think in minimum 2 or 3 times played. Every time he plays, he just plays well. So for 200-1, I'll take that risk as well. So it's a large card. I actually still have over a unit left of my bankroll, even though I'm betting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys in my card. I still got room because, of course, the way I do my betting is I have a weekly bankroll, and I bet as many guys as I can fit in that bankroll to win $1,500. That's the way I do it. And I bet 400, so it'd be $1,100 profit minimum. All the triple-digit odds guys, I win a little bit more. So Doug Gim, 40-1, 8 places. Pearson Cootie, 40-1, 8 places. Jackson Suber, 45-1, 8 places. Pendrith, 66-1, 8 places. Mao, 75-1, 8 places. Maybe we should call him the chairman. I think that'd be a great nickname for Mao. Just call him the chairman. 75-1, 8 places. Ben Coles, 5, 80-1, 8 places. Jesper Svensson, 100-1, 8 places. And Aaron Wise and David Lipsky, 200-1, 8 places. All right, Spencer, what are you doing? What are you getting into for bets this week?
We have a lot of the similar names at the very top. I took Pearson Cootie at 55-1. That's just straight to win this. I took Max Homa at 55-1. Taylor Moore, 110-1. Doug Gim, 50-1. Mac Meisner, 66-1. And then AJ Ewert, 175-1. I will say this, Kenny, I don't bet a ton in the outright market. Like for me, I bet to win 5 units, and a lot of the exposure that I try to find, I do it in matchups, whether that be pre-tournament or in-tournament matchups. I'll give the 3 that I'm on currently for anybody who's listening. I cannot promise that the prices are still going to be there. Over in my Discord channel, we tend to move the number kind of quickly, but Brian Harmon, -105 over Michael Kim. Christian Bezadenhout, -120 over my boy Jason Day. Anybody who's ever followed me knows that I kind of have I guess it's become a love-hate relationship with Jason Day. It used to just be a love relationship that I can't seem to get him right either way with it. So, I mean, temper expectations based off of that one. And then the one that I do think I'm going to be different than the market on is I took Ben James at +110 over Sam Stevens. I understand the Sam Stevens love. I bet him to win this tournament last year. The one big difference for me, though, is if you look at his 2 top 10 finishes in 2025 and 2023, he ended up ranking inside of the top 15 of my model entering that tournament. This week entering this, he's 65th overall, 78th for upside, 55th for safety. Back-to-back miscuts, which as Kenny just talked about, I do not want to overblow that situation. There are some guys that just are not going to play as well on link-style courses that are going to be able to turn it around. And we can think of all the driving acumen that Sam Stevens has. A lot of the birdies and train wrecks is where he thrives at the end of the day at easy scoring courses. But like for me, the metrics had more red flags in them on the approach metrics than I would care to see. And that's kind of where he ended up grading lower than he normally would. If you take from 150 plus, he's not inside of the top 50 of any of those areas. He's 121st at easy approach courses. He's 89th when the greens in regulation are easy. And he's been finding water recently. And when I compared that to last year, you're still going to have the top 11 overall grade for weighted off the tee for him, which is what you got in 2025 and the other year that he came top 10. But what you do not have now is this consistent play with the irons at similar courses. So those are the three matchups that I ended up taking on. I'm sure I will grab more at some point as we go. Always throwing in tournament bets. That's kind of my bread and butter at this point. I do want to ask you a question, though, Kenny, before we move off of this topic, because I also like David Lipsky this week. I'm curious where you had him in your model.
What's his price?
He is 6,700.
6,700. Lipsky, where are you at? 108th in my model. Yeah.
I have him 37th.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest disparities that I have when I base it off of DK price. He would be the fifth biggest disparity on this. So, look, I like the play on him. Like I'm going to probably try to find a way to get exposure to him. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that yet outside of DFS, but I think he's an interesting name to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Do you play the placement markets? Do you play each ways?
I don't recommend each ways. I think each way markets are a really good market to look into sometimes. It's hard for tracking as you're trying to look. I've always said to people, I don't like selling picks. A lot of people who buy my package, though, do like the picks that are given. And I'm always trying to teach and not tout. I think that if you have the ability to play each way, it's something to look into with it. It's not something that I personally recommend when it comes to wagers because the tracking becomes so difficult as we're trying to do this, and not everybody has access to it at the end of the day. But yeah, placement markets are kind of this simple way to go around that, to where find a top 40 on David Lipsky at the price. I don't know what he'll land on that, but if he's anywhere near even odds on that, you probably got a pretty good value on it.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds. I'm guessing it would probably be. I don't think it would. Maybe it would be minus money, but it wouldn't be much. But yeah, I like each ways just because for me, I'm not trying to win like a shit ton of money betting. Like I the shit ton of money that I can win is DFS. That's where I can win like a lot of money. But when it comes to betting, I want to be able to do it forever, because I got to do it for the show. Right. And so that's why the each ways help me. It's almost like having a cash lineup. Like the way I do my DFS is I have, my cash lineup is about 45% of my bankroll. It's one lineup and it's 45% of my bankroll. And so if I hit the cash, I'm basically just about breaking even for the week. Right. And that's so because there's going to be, I only make 5 GPP lineups now. I stopped mass multi-entering. I just do larger single entries, $100 single entry. I'll do like the $55, tournament, the $33, all, single entries. The $55 is not a single entry, but it's only like 1,400 entrants in it. And so I only make 5 lineups. So that's where I want to try and make the money, because, you can win 10 grand. And, I'm up $7,000 in DFS this year. But a lot of that has to do with me basically just breaking even a lot, right? You know what I'm saying? Breaking even a lot for the week, and then having a couple of good weeks in GPPs. That's just the formula. And I use that formula for betting as well now too, because I want to keep doing this. And the thing is, I don't want to win like, a couple $100. I want to win something where it feels like a tangible amount. So $1,000 minimum, And so that's why I do the way that I do when I do my outrights. I bet 8 units to win 30, right? Is the way that I do it. But, half of those bets are each way bets in that bankroll. And what that does, I think I've had 23, 24 each way bets since I started. I'm almost close to 100 since the fall of 2004 is when I started this. I almost have 100 each way hits. And what that does is it keeps me sort of level. And so for this year, I'm up like $1,200, right, in betting, which is not that much, especially since $50 a unit, and I bet eight units a week, right? So that's not that much. But what it's doing is I'm not losing a shit ton. I can do this for a long, extended amount of time. And if I just did each way, if I just did outrights, I remember before I did each ways, and I was doing this for the show, like I would go through stretches where I didn't win for like 10, 12, 15 weeks. And I had to, maybe even more than that. And I had to like lower my bankroll because I couldn't afford to keep losing the amount that I was losing for 15, 20 weeks. I just can't do that. So that's why the each way betting has helped, because it pads your bankroll and keeps you afloat. Even when you're in a bad stretch and can't hit a winner, you get a couple of those each ways, you're good to go. And that's why I like each way betting. If you can find it, you should try it. One thing I did notice about DraftKings here recently, their top 5 numbers are very, very similar to the top 5 payouts that you would get on a lot of each way books. So now the top 8 and the top 10, they're not that close. But the top 5s are pretty close. Like last week, I bet, I forget who it was. I think it was Bob Mack, first round leader. It was 44-1 for his first round leader, and the top 5 was plus 1050. And that's right about where it would be. I think it was 11-1. What was the right number if you did the each way with 5 places? So it was right there.
Yeah.
So I mean, make sure you check that out on DraftKings. Of course, the dead heat will kill you, which it did me, because he finished top 5, tied with like 17 people. I won like $10 when I could have won, like 5 or 1,000, right, on that bet. So, all right. So sounds good. We got the bets. Let's move on to the DFS blood, sweat, and tears. Let's go to this 10K range. What are you doing with Scotty? Can you possibly play him at 14.9 with this field in the 6K range? I think it's too difficult.
I would like to see where ownership lands. I've been, Kenny, every single week kind of zigging and zagging from where the public ends up landing. So at the Genesis, I faded him. At the Open, I played him. It is really challenging. You leave yourself with almost $7,000 on average for the last 5 spots if you start with him at 14.9. Even if you just look at like my model and we go to the very top of this, like take the top. I mean, Zach Blair is a name at 6,900, but like there's very few $6,000 golfers as I end up scrolling down this list. And the problem is you're going to have to find spots somewhere where you are willing to take a gamble or a shot at this. I would like to see where the ownership ends up landing, because I think that there is a spot from a contrarian standpoint. Like you've talked about it with DFS, and it's the same thing with betting at the end of the day, but like we look specifically here for DFS. Bankroll management is really important. And if you look at DFS contests, it's really important to, 1, understand what contests that you are in, and 2, the payouts are so top heavy in it, in some of these like large field contests, that you kind of have to differentiate yourself in spots where you're willing to do it. The optimal in my model is going to say that starting with Scotty is not going to end up pushing out the optimal build. Like Kitayama being number 2 for me at 9,800, and Max Homa being number 4 for me at 8,600, and Meisner at 81 inside of the top 5. Like there's so many easy paths for me to build a steady lineup here, but I would like to see where the ownership is. It doesn't mean I'm going to get there. And I always feel like at the end of the day, Scotty ends up being a lot more popular than you expect him to be when you run initial ownership projections behind it. But I've kind of seen the same thing every single post so far this week, that Scotty does not allow you the ability to play every single golfer that is the staple to your cash game lineups that you would want to be building around, whether that's Doug Gim or Max Homa or Kurt Kitayama or even a Tom Kim. Like there are so many names in that section. So I would say understand the contest that you are trying to enter it into, understand what you're trying to get out of it, and kind of go from there. So for me right now, I know that doesn't answer the question, Kenny. I think it's 50-50. It's just going to come down to how popular he is.
That sounds about right. I mean, I just can't get it. I can't do it. And the thing is, it's even the betting markets, the without Scotty markets. I don't even think that's worth it now. He just hasn't been winning.
I agree.
Now, is this prime for him to win? Yes. And the only other win he has this year was another sort of weak-ish, but it wasn't as weak as this. The Amex was the one win he had. And it was, a weak field event just like this, but not as weak as this. So I'm a little worried, but I'm not going to play him in DFS, and I'm not going to do the without Scotty market in betting. And it's another reason why it's nice to have each way betting.
I was just going to say very quickly, the other thing with the without Scotty market that you have to consider is if you just look around and you shop around, there are a lot of books out there. I'll leave them nameless for the time being, but there are a lot of books out there that will offer higher prices if you really will shop around in these spots. So what ends up happening at the books that give you the without Scotty markets as a potential route to take is you get suppressed pricing on the outright at that book, and then you once again get a suppressed price in the Scotty market or without Scotty market. So you're not even necessarily getting the best of the numbers. Something that's 35-1 at a particular book could be 50-1 if you shop it around. In the without market, all of a sudden now it's 30-1, and you're taking a golfer that's 30-1 there without Scotty when you can get him at 50 somewhere else if you just kind of price shop. And
then also the dead heats.
I mean,
kill you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of negative things around it, and it's a tough market to enter. It's not something that I find myself ever getting into. I would be lying, though, Kenny, if I didn't say I was afraid that Scotty is going to win this tournament. I think anytime that you have target golf on a golfer that is going to be able to avoid water, and you talked about it at the very beginning part of this show, like what is the one thing holding him back in any of the majors or any of these tournaments? It's really been the putter. If putting is super simple here and his putting statistics see an uptick on easy courses for putting, you have to fear that this is the week that he puts it all together, gets himself to 27 under par, captures this title. It wasn't enough for me to not make outright bets from all the names that I talked about, but it's also not enough for me to like completely to remove him from the field. Like I want to make sure for DFS, where are we ownership wise before we move forward? And even as you go through my model, like in like the $9,000 range, there's a lot of hits and misses for me. There's a lot of names that I like for cash game builds, but you probably can play Scotty and maybe fit in a guy like Meisner, Ben James, Bezaid, and Hout, but you're going to be having to find somebody low into the sixes, and that's kind of the question mark is how many value plays can you really get as you move down this slate?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Now, so let's move on from Scotty. Let's go to the 9K range. I'll go first. My first cash game cornerstone is going to be Kitayama at $9,800. Of course, he's won here last year. He's had good performances here in the past. He's having a good season. I don't see, and the price seems very, very affordable. It's an easy click for your first guy in cash, I think. So my first cash game cornerstone is going to be Kitayama. My second cash game cornerstone is in the bottom of this list. It's going to be Doug Kim this week. It's actually Doug Kim. Gim and Kim, there is no hard K sound in Korean language. So Gim is the same as my last name. My last name would be Gim in Korean, if you said it in Korean. So me and him actually have the same last name. I talked about him in the betting segment. First in strokes gained off the tee the last 24 rounds. Really good on par fours. Iron game has been improving. Doesn't make too many mistakes. It's had some upside. Has had top 30s in this event before. He's been making a lot of cuts. So I like those two guys for my cash game build. I never play this guy. I think I might play Keith Mitchell this week. I think it's very, very possible I play him. He comes in third in my model. His iron game and ball striking off the tee has been exceptional. He makes a ton of birdies. He's really, really good on par fours. And he's well above average from 175 to 200. He's actually third from 200 plus from the fairway in the last 24 rounds. I think I'm going to play some Killer Keith.
It doesn't take much for me to find a way to get onto Keith Mitchell, unfortunately. Like, the data always likes him. The volatility, I mean, you can even just see it from like what he's done recently. Miscut 51st, 22nd, 4th, 29th, miscut 5th, all over the map. It's kind of what you get with Keith Mitchell. There's a reason why everybody makes the joke. He's first round leader, then he misses the cut. It's like the Keegan Bradley experience that you get over and over again. But my model liked him. I had him third for upside. I had him inside of the top 10 for safety, which is a lot better than you normally get from him. 5th overall. I like the Kurt Kitayama take that you talked about. I'm going to play Tom Kim. I'm going to play Doug Gim, and I'm probably going to be out on Jake Knapp from the current version. Like, this is a really nice course fit for him. We see it with the third place that he got last year, but until we see any form of consistency during this return, I'm just going to let him beat me at this point. But like, it kind of goes back to the Scotty Scheffler discussion I was having. The amount of players I can get into this range is going to be somewhat predicated on how much exposure do I actually get to Scotty Scheffler. If it ends up being a super high percentage that I end up playing, the builds that are not Scotty will start in this section. If it ends up being that I don't play any Scotty at all, which is, I'm not leaning in that direction. I do plan on playing Scotty this week, but if I didn't play Scotty, then all of a sudden a lot of Kitayama, a lot of Tom Kim, a lot of Doug Gim. I think Jackson Koiven makes sense. There are names to consider in this section. And if you look in my model, there's a lot of top 15 options to consider from top to bottom.
Sounds good. Let's move on to this 8K range. Who you got in this 8K range there, Spence?
I like your Subaru take. I think Subaru's somebody to consider. I'm going to be very aggressive on Max Homa in all iterations of the market, whether that be the outright that I talked about, whether it be for safety and cash games, whether it be as a placement bet. So I'm going to try to get a bunch of exposure to him. One of the biggest discrepancies inside of my model in this $8,000 section. And then if you push it a little bit lower, Mac Meisner continues to pop for me. Ben James, I worry about ever so slightly just because I have such limited data on him. And when you have limited data and you see somebody starting to pop in certain areas of the model, you have to temper expectations at least somewhat. But a young golfer with a big upside, don't love the negative trajectory that we see from 9th to 17th when it comes to upside. And that safety number is just kind of what we've seen recently from a very limited.
How do you project the upside rankings that you have? How does that work?
So for me, upside, Byron does it a lot differently than I do. I know that. I know Byron's trying to look for spikes in his model in given areas. I'm looking purely for upside for data. What does the data tell you about a golfer compared to the peers that you are trying to find on it? So like you take somebody like Ben James inside of my sheet, there's a negative trajectory for upside. A lot of that is a short sample size of what we've seen on TPC properties that has moved him down. I mean, like, that's the one category that is affecting him. And for him in particular, it's such a small sample size. I don't want to look too much into it, but upside is just purely data. It's if you threw away course history, you threw away current form, and you did nothing other than what does the data tell you about this golfer? That's where I land on the upside. And then safety is if you mostly, not all the way, but mostly throw away a lot of the stats and you just look at course history, current form. It's why you see these massive disparities take place in a model of a Jordan Smith who's 34th overall. The statistics don't like him as much, but the safety moves him up the sheet. And that's kind of where, even if you go into a section, like I have a fantasy value chart that tries to look at price per dollar. And that's kind of what I'm looking at in every single section, whether it's overall value or upside value or safety value, or if you mix all of those things together for a weighted value. That's where I am trying to find some of my biggest discrepancies in the model for DFS purposes.
All right. So the 8K range, Homa, you're a fan of? Homa, I'm a fan of. He's my third cash game cornerstone. I'm really happy because I was worried about this pick, but your love for Homa definitely made me feel a lot better. He is my third cash game cornerstone. He tends to make a lot of cuts. He's had a little peak, a little upside in his gain here in the last month or so. So I do like Homa as my third cash game cornerstone. I like Subaru, like we talked about in the betting segment. And I like Ben James. He was so good in college. One of the best amateurs, out there. Him and Koivun are the two best. And I think, in a field like this, we've seen guys play this event. I think Matthew Wolff won this in his fourth ever PGA Tour start. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibilities for these young maybe potential studs to go in there and make a mark this week. Anybody else in the 7K or in the 8K you want to talk about?
Probably not. I mean, I'm going to be out on a lot of the names that were not mentioned. I think Jordan Smith is interesting because of some of the safety marks for him. But no, I mean, my favorite plays in the section would probably be Homa, Meisner, Ben James.
I'm going to have to look into Meisner a little bit more. You're going to make me dig in deeper on a little bit more on Meisner. But let's get to this 7K range. My final cash game cornerstone is going to be Emiliano Grillo. He's played this event a lot and has done well. A little course history buff here for Mr. Grillo. He's been having a decent run here the last couple of months, making a lot of cuts. So that will be my final cash game cornerstone. So my cash game cornerstones this week are going to be Kurt Kitayama at $9,800, Doug Gim at $9,000, Max Homa at $8,600, and Emiliano Grillo at $70,000. I think he's at $7,300. Right now, I filled out my lineup with Kiefer and Pendrith. I'm not sure we'll keep that. We'll see how that plays out by the end of the week. But that's who I have as of this moment in my cash lineup. Other guys that I do like, obviously, I'm going to like Kiefer. He comes in pretty high in my model. I think 6. His iron game and his off the tee game. He's number 1 in strokes gained ball striking in the last 24 rounds in this field. So I'll play a little bit of him. Other guys, William Mao, who's been playing pretty decent here recently as well. I think he comes in 16th in my model. Again, well above average off the tee iron game, really, really solid. Other guys down here in the lower 7K range. This is when we start getting a little sparse when it comes to plays. But Taylor Moore interests me down here. Jesper Svensson, it will be my hustler play of the week this week. Jesper, again, I'm hoping that people come in and see that he's missed his last couple of cuts, or he missed his last cut. They were across the pond. I think he missed one cut, and he blew up on the weekend at the Open Championship. But those are on faux links courses. The last time we saw him on PGA courses, he had back-to-back top 10s. I'm hoping people see those couple of missed cuts, make his ownership, single digits, and I think he has the upside to do well here. I think he finished top 15 here last year. So hustler play of the week will be Jesper Svensson. Who do you like in this 7K range?
I think there's a lot of names to consider. I'll kind of just rapid fire off some of these options when I look for price per dollar of the best values in my sheet. I'll start from the bottom and work up as the names that are a little bit even more playable. Talked about Taylor Moore. I think that makes a lot of sense. I like Brian Harman. That might be a spot that I can be different on than the public. I don't think people are going to necessarily get to him, but a spot that my model likes. I run a value rating sheet in my model, and if you're above 14 rating on it, it's usually where you want to be on it. So I think that's a name to keep in mind there. I like your Emiliano Grillo call. I'm going to play Christian Bezuidenhout. I talked about him in a matchup over Jason Day. I think he's a very nice name to consider inside of the top 25 of all iterations of my model there from overall upside and safety. Rasmus Nergard Peterson, a name that is a little bit too low in my sheet, who is pushing up there. Andrew Putnam. I think Putnam's one of the better values. You've talked about William Meow, somebody that my model also seems to like. And then just to throw out a few more, I worry a little bit. My model always Zach Bochu, or Bochu, I think is how it's pronounced. The birdies part of him is great. The train wrecks part of him is where my concerns would come into play. You kind of just see it from a statistical perspective. The upside's great. The safety kind of leaves something to be desired. I would like to kind of sleep on that one and see where the ownership ends up landing because he's highly volatile for what I am looking for. But Seamus Power makes sense. And for me, the two best values actually on the entire board would come in this section with AJ Ewert, who I have the outright on, and then Ben Coles, who you talked about. I think those are two names that make it really simple in some areas to get to Scotty. Like, I mean, look, Ben Coles is a top 10 golfer in my model at $7,300. You're still going to have to find somebody underneath, but it is not a common occurrence for you to get this much playability this low into the 7,000s. And I do think it goes to show the uncertainty on this board from top to bottom, where you can get a name like Coles that just pairs really nicely with any sort of a lineup that you can put together. So I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Ben Coles this week. I considered him as an outright. I didn't end up getting there, but I really like your Ben Coles takes that you had earlier in the show.
Yeah, I'm a fan of him too. I'll be playing him. Now we get to the tough part, the 6K range. I'll let you go first because it's a struggle for me here down here. Who do you like? Who do you think has potential? Who do you see that you can put in a Scotty lineup?
It gets gross fast. I mean, we've talked about David Lipsky, like on my sheet right there. These would be the biggest disparities that I have in my model when it just comes to taking the rank. The DK position, which just would be their rank overall to the overall rank of what I have. So, for example, on this, David Lipsky is the 84th price player on DK, 37th in my model. You look inside of the sheet, a 47 spot difference, which ends up giving you a top 5 disparity. I think you can consider Lipsky. I like Zach Blair, super consistent over the last handful of weeks, back-to-back top 10 finishes, 32nd at the US Opens. So there's spots to consider, like the two at the top of the board. That would be the two biggest disparities for me that you have to have hesitation on, but there's something being said in the model. Davis Chatfield, limited data at the end of the day, but a little bit of an upside rank inside my sheet. Also with good current form with 3 top 35 finishes over his last 3 tournaments. And then the name I'll throw out there is Troy Merritt. And I understand like the recent form from Merritt here has not necessarily been brilliant, but Merritt is a golfer, even though he's from the Iowa area, but he moved over into this general range of the world early in his life. And he credits the 3M Open and TPC Twin Cities as being his home course. I would be curious to see what the ownership is, because like this is much higher, not even taking that into account, than he normally sits in my model. And a lot of that comes from like TPC courses and that category that I talked about of not hitting the water and like all the water avoidance things are very high from him. So he plays this course generally well. And if all I'm looking for is how can I get somebody to make a cut, potentially give me a top 30 or 40 finish to pair next to Scotty, I do think Troy Merritt has some playability with like how familiar he is with this course. And then I think Davis Chatfield would be a little bit more of the boom or bust option, to where the recent results look good. But I mean, 14th for weighted strokes gained total, even if that's through a limited sample size, 24th overall, even if that's through not necessarily the best tournaments. Like he might be in the secondary events for a lot of those. I think there's something to be said about that. So, I mean, these names here, like down to, I would say, AJ Ewert, are all names, if I am playing with Scotty, that I am trying to find a way of how many of these options can I theoretically get into this build and kind of try to construct the lineup from there. So, yeah, I think it's tough in the 6,000s, Kenny, but I do think there's more playability than you sometimes get in this range.
I like that. I didn't even have Merritt or Chatfield. I just clicked them, so I'll look into them more. Fuck with that. Now, guys, I mean, maybe a little Gordon Sargent for me with a good finish last week is a guy that I would take a peek at. Luke Clanton, who's played, I think he played well here in the past, if I'm not mistaken. We know that the talent's there. He's had sort of a down year. But we've seen some flashes from him here in the last month. The iron game has been really, really solid for Mr. Luke Lipsky. I'm definitely going to play Aaron Wise. Is another guy who, talent-wise, you forget that, it was him versus Bo Hostler for the NCAA championship, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Like, he was that good in college. He had some, mental issues and stuff like that, but it looks like he's back. So I might give him a little board. What about Mazzoli, who won last week? I mean, like, that just came. I had I never even heard of this dude before in my life. What do you have any type of numbers from Mazzoli? Do you only do PGA Tour? Because I know he's from the DP, right? That's where he normally plays, correct?
Yeah, I only do PGA Tour, and what's being pulled in for me is going to be from whatever I have over the last 18 months, which I assume will probably be from last week. So you're going to get these really high-end marks that are going to pop for birdies and train wrecks, and the birdie numbers. You win a tournament at 20-something under par, it's going to do that when that's a very limited sample size of what my model has for him. But the upside numbers like him, I don't have any data one way or another to feel super confident about it, but you go and you win a golf tournament. I don't really care where you win it at. It matters. Like, it's tough to win on any tours, and it's the PGA Tour and a secondary event, sure, but credit to him. He held off a lot of those guys, the Ben Jameses of the world, and names that people are playing as high-end options this weekend. He got himself across the finish line there. So, you got to respect him for that. I think there's certainly worse looks that you can consider.
All right. Anybody else that we missed, or are we good to go?
I think that's it, Kenny. I don't have a massive take on a lot of these other names. Like, my model's kind of been popping for Brett Snedeker recently. Not great course history here with back-to-back missed cuts. Don't even necessarily love the lack of upside that he has exhibited in some of these spots. But no, I think we are pretty aligned on a lot of these names. I do stand by kind of what I said earlier, that Ben Coles is probably one of the best values that you're going to find on the board, and super easy to build around. But a lot of young, talented golfers who are trying to make a mark, and you talked about it with Matthew Wolff of winning within the first 5 starts of your career. It's not inconceivable that Koiven does the same thing. It's not inconceivable that we see a Ben James or a Jackson Subaru, who's been on fire recently, just continue to move themselves up these leaderboards. And limited data and sample size inside of my model, but even with the limited data and sample size, we're still talking about top 10 golfers in pretty much all of those spots with these young kids. So I'm curious to see what they are able to produce and do this week, but they have an opportunity to really cement themselves on tour.
All right. Any one and done options for the people?
That's a good question. I would be, we are running out of tournaments at this point. So, don't play Scotty. You can play Scotty for the playoff event if you still have him available. I truly think everybody else is on the board. I would probably keep this simple to where I'm going to kind of just look at the top of my model with Kitayama, Meisner, Homa. I would probably go with one of those 3. Consider Koiven, James, and Suber if you're trying to find a spot with 3 golfers that aren't going to necessarily all of them make it to the end of the year. I think those are 3 names to consider. Ben Coles makes sense. Those kind of 7 options there for everybody to take and choose between, but kind of just pick your poison would be my best take. We have how many tournaments left, Kenny, in reality? 4 or 5 of them. I don't know what the exact number is, but 2 of them are playoff events, and then there's a couple coming in. So it's all systems go. Just don't play Scotty.
There you go. I like that you went over a bunch because I have no clue yet. So I'll probably wait till Wednesday before I put it in. All right. So that should do it for the show for this week. Spencer, why don't you tell the people where they can find you, promote whatever you want to promote. Let the people know what's up.
I really appreciate you having me on this show, Kenny. Look up to you. Byron, as I said, is one of my best friends in this space. Really honored to be able to do this with you. Meant a lot when you reached out to fill in for Byron. So hopefully I was able to do Byron some justice on this show. If you're not doing so already, you can find me on X at TOffSports. You can find my website, teeoffsports.club, where you can get the model. One of the nice things about the model is you're able, if you go to file, make a copy, you can make a copy of the model and reweigh any of the statistics that's inside of the sheet, have your own database at your fingertips to be able to do anything that you want with it. See where I have everybody ranked every single week. And then, as you talked about at the beginning of the show, Kenny, you can find me on King of the Draft. That airs every Tuesday at 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern. We're getting to the Sweet 16 there. So a lot of big names still in the space. I'm hoping, Kenny, that you and I next year can have a better run at it. Hopefully we can find ourselves into the Sweet 16, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do that contest. It's something for me that means a lot, because I want to make sure that, we're in a sector of the world with gambling and everything that we do where we are trying to promote our own shows and our own content and everything. But it was important for me that we found a mutual area for all of us to get together, support one another, and at the end of the day, just provide really high level golf content in a not natural way for the listeners to be able to hear it and see lineups drafted that you may not consider because of the unique outlook of not being able to take exactly who you want. So please tune into that show if you haven't already. But thank you once again, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
Spencer, you fucking crushed it today. There's no doubt. That was some solid work. I do appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And we're definitely going to have you back. There's no doubt in my mind. You just brought an overload of information. That's exactly what I asked for. So thank you so much. Make sure you go check out Spencer's work. Follow him on X. Go to his website. Do all the things you need to do. Sharp dude. We got right here. You can find me on X at KendoVT. I'll have my final betting card, any type of weird stuff that you need, any nooks and crannies about the event that we're going to see for this week and every single week. It should be fun. I know there is no major hangover here. We do this because we love it. Hopefully we can win some motherfucking money. DGen Nation.
I've been getting dirty money, Jordan Belfort, stacking penny stocks.